Good morning, everybody. I am Olivier Behra. I am calling from Paris, and I thank Airmid to give me the opportunity to speak with you guys and to talk about medicinal plants. I started to work in Madagascar 35 years ago because it's a fantastic place for plants. Not only for plants, but especially for plants. We are talking about 2,000 medicinal and aromatic plants living on that island. Only a few of them are known for their medicinal properties. More than 10 of them are exported already to the international markets. And much more research is needed on the cosmetic industry. Every year we find new active ingredients in the plants. And it's really an amazing place. It is also important to realize that these plants are used by local communities. For something like 90% of the local communities only treat themselves with plants. It is their health, it is that biodiversity which is helping the people to stay healthy and to treat themselves when they're sick, not any drugs from pharmacies. The forests of Madagascar are very interesting on the eastern part. This is where the richest place are for biodiversity, with hundreds of plants of medicinal properties, with interest. Unfortunately, people are relying also on slash and burn agriculture for their food. They chop down the forest for very little productivity because they've done this way all their life for their ancestors. Burning this forest so rich in plant is a nonsense because people don't see the value of the forest itself. That's why they destroy it, and because they need food. There is no other opportunity for these people at the moment than to increase the land surface because they don't have fertilizer, they don't have anything. The result is a disaster because the forest is burnt and the soil is destroyed, and there is no more productivity at all after a few years. The solutions appeared very simple to me. Let's bring the value to the plants. Let's help them to make distillation of the plants they use for their medicinal properties as a decoction. But let's make essential oils so we can put them on the market so they can make money out of it. Simple, isn't it? A bit crazy indeed. But 30 years ago, there was only one plant producing essential oil exported, which was an endemic plant from Madagascar. It was Ravensara aromatica, now called Agatophyllum aromaticum. And but the plant was not very easy to standardize for its oil, and also there was lots of problems of potential over exploitation of the plants. So we decided not to work anymore on the export of this oil, just carry on some research on it and find a plant from the west coast. This is where we went. We had to bring the still. We are building the stills in Madagascar. They are stainless steel, built really a basic way, but they are very efficient to produce high quality standard essential oil. We bring them by road, and we had to transport them on the coast until we could not go further, because at what stage on the west coast there is no more road. Where we go, where we're gonna find these places with lots of plants that we were looking for, it was 60 kilometers away from the first dirt road. That's why we had to take a boat to go there. That crazy journey was lots of fun for the people doing it because it's incredible. The sightseeing are wonderful. We know where we go, we know what we have to do, but it's amazing to have these incredible trips. When you travel there, people are in such remote area, they've never seen something like that. They have fish, lots of fish still, but otherwise they don't have anything except a little bit of rice fields, into swampy areas. So when you can bring them incomes, it's very interesting for all of them, and they look at us coming, with great interest to show that we can bring incomes. But to put the new oil on the market, you need a team. And the next crazy idea was to bring the team of Yves Rocher on the field. Yves Rocher is a large company, cosmetic company, French cosmetic company, worth billions of dollars. And I wanted them to understand what we talk about when we talk about plants bringing active ingredients. Jacques Rocher, the son of Yves Rocher, came on the field with his team to look at the local communities, how we could work with them. It was amazing, the encounter and the challenge we had to face, because we had basic tools to produce in the countryside. That was the aim of the project, to show that we can really produce at the local level. But we needed to have these scientists to help us to make sure that we could produce the high quality standard required by the industry. Local communities were there, very interested in what we were doing. It was a challenge. But the effort was worth it. It appeared that the essential oil extracted from the plant was as powerful as an essential oil that it was as a plant, for the local communities. They used it mainly to fight, respiratory disease. And that's what we found out, exactly the same with the essential oil. Rich in 1.8 cineol, but also in other molecules. The essential oil proved to be antiviral, antibacterial, and good, to fight immune system problems. For the cosmetic industry, it showed cell regeneration properties, which was very interesting for Yves Rocher. Enhancing the value of one plant for the benefit of local community is one thing. I wanted to see if we could also value the plants at a level where it could benefit the conservation of biodiversity.
I've chosen a place in the eastern rainforest of Madagascar. The Wigna forest is an incredible place, a hotspot of biodiversity. There is, on 5 square kilometers here, more frogs than anywhere else on Earth. I looked in many places. There are medicinal plants, and we were looking for a plant that could be used to produce essential oil. We find the butterfly ginger, and we trained the local communities to start to produce essential oil out of it. The process is not very complex because it's an old process from the Egyptian time. You have to realize we were using training the people, and this way they could produce their own essential oil and start to have incomes from their own distillery in the middle of nowhere. This changed a lot the vision of the local communities, and they got involved themselves into planting trees to recreate a forest corridor. We used in Wigna the incredible amount of 100 species of endemic plants that we were using for reforestation program. There's been up to 450,000 trees that we have replanted in the forest of Wigna. All these plants included some medicinal plants that the people were using on their daily life. So this was a big change because we showed respect to their traditional way of life, including the reforestation program. So this was really something we were gaining the support and stopping the deforestation while increasing the reforestation and regeneration of the soil diversity also. This was needed for the forest itself. This model was starting to be interesting for local NGOs, but for international donors also, because for once there was an opportunity to see that we could have a vision saying if we increase the incomes of the local communities, they might get involved into the protection of the forest if these incomes are linked to the biodiversity. This was going on, and school, we supported. There was 30% of the kids going to school when we arrived with the NGO Man and the Environment. At the end of the day, almost all the kids were going to school. The local communities with their incomes started to support the health center. It was so incredible. So we have all a vision of new possibility for the local communities that were going from a stage of slash and burn agriculture to a stage of planting and seeing the value of all the biodiversity, the diversity of the plants. But now let's talk about going from no net loss to net positive impact. And let me introduce you to an incredible core benefit. When we organize the sustainable use of the plants for the benefit of local communities in Wigna, we also bring in conservation to the habitat of the Indri, which is a critically endangered species. And let me introduce you also to the most fantastic story of involving a private company far there in the eastern rainforest of Madagascar. I have been able to bring the researcher of Chanel. They wanted themselves to come into the forest to see because they knew that the plants were there, the plants they were looking for. They didn't have any clue of what they would find, but they obviously knew because they were biologists that it is in the rainforest that you're going to find the most interesting plants to produce extract which are active. The researchers were pretty obviously excited, but it was even more exciting when they got into their lab and they found the efficiency with all their technologies, how to produce the extract, how to test them, how to make sure that they have really properties, that would make them efficient to produce cosmetic ingredients. This was the most exciting part, and this showed Chanel that it was worth it, to work into the conservation areas that we were working in. But just for them, it was because it was plant extract that they were making money out of it. The Chanel Super Cream with the extract from the forest of Wigna came out. Super expensive creams, but efficient creams, making it worth it to carry on the research.
Okay, now I'll sit down and we'll look together on the analysis of what's been going on for the last 20 years of our experience on how we could involve the private sector into biodiversity conservation. And the first story is getting back to Chanel. When I was working with the researchers of Chanel, to find the super active ingredients in the rainforest of Madagascar, once or twice I was going to France, to Paris, and I was going to meet them into the super fancy Chanel, offices. And once I got introduced to Andrea Davac, who was at that time the CEO of Chanel. And it was quite funny because I don't have it here, but I had my traditional hat of bushman. And it was quite funny for the people of Chanel to see me in their super clean black and white offices. It was pretty unusual and it was quite amazing to see me coming in. So they had fun. And they introduced me to the CEO. I had already been introduced to the first CEO that I've been working under. And this time it was funny because Andrea Davac was probably one of the most interesting person I've met during my life, because he was a visionary and able also to fulfill the needs of these shareholder that are the owner of Chanel. And Andrea Davac, when he met me, had I remember that sentence, "So you are Mr. Biodiversity." And I said to him, "Yes, Mr. Davac, But we are not talking about my love of frogs or lemurs and things like that. Not even on my love of orchids and palm trees and lots of plants that I love. But we are talking about the capital of your company. Your researchers are coming to me in the forest down there in Madagascar to look for new plants, for new active ingredients. And I am there and I see that the forest is burning. The forests of Madagascar are disappearing. This is nonsense. Basically, the value of a company, I didn't say that to him, but the value of a company is how much money it makes, but also how much potential it has to grow. And when the forests of Madagascar are burning, and the other forests of the rainforest everywhere on Earth, in fact, it is the potential of innovation of your company which is going down, because your researchers are coming to meet me to find the new active ingredients which are the future super active ingredients of the cosmetic industry and the pharmaceutical industry. So this made him to think that maybe we were not talking about some funny ecologists down there, but we were talking about real business. And the work we did with Chanel was pretty amazing at that time, because they decided to get involved. I said to him, okay, let's work on your value chains to see the impact they have on biodiversity, to see if there are negative impacts, but also to see if we could bring positive impacts to carry on keeping the value of potential investment of your company in new active ingredients and potential more incomes for your company. And Andrea Davac agreed really on this, and it was pretty amazing journey also. We have in a few years started a program to support conservation programs for biodiversity around value chains. I worked 4 years on the evaluation of the impact of the value chains on social and environmental impact to see what was going on. It was pretty new at that time. We're talking about 10 years ago, because at that time people were buying, company was buying extracts from company producing the extract. So the company producing the extract were the one knowing where the plants were coming from. And at that time, Chanel decided that they wanted to be clean, which is a bit more in advance than other companies. They had the means to do it. And so Chanel decided to look into the suppliers' value chain, and they asked me to do it. And we did it, and it was pretty amazing, because at one stage we found out some non-risk value chains and some value chains which were thought to be non-risk that were indeed at risk. But at the end of the day, what Andrea Davac decided at that time to do was to go further, is to say, let's go on the principle to say we want to have net positive impact. Evaluating your value chains will help you to say, I don't have any negative impact on social aspect. I don't have any negative impact on environmental aspects. But let me bring you down to something now about organic agriculture and fair trade labels. When you talk about organic agriculture, for many people, it's very cool. But in fact, organic agriculture is just no pollution. I have seen in the US 600 hectares of organic plantations of basil at that time. It was amazing. It is certified organic. But how do they do it? To avoid to use pesticide, they were just cleaning these huge fields with fire, they had these tractors, putting the fires on the land, so they would burn everything. All insects, all seeds, let's say called of weeds, were burned. So they could do organic agriculture afterwards on these dead land. This is not something linked to biodiversity. If you talk about fair trade, it's about the same. I worked in lots of value chains for different companies. The system is that if I talk about more than 3 of them at the same time, I cannot be sued because I'm not doing advertising or blaming any specific companies. So I work for Chanel, for Yves Rocher, for L'Occitane en Provence, which is now in the US also. And many of the value chains can be improved, of course, for their social impact by paying a fair trade price. But what is a fair trade price? Fair trade price is making sure that people have got a social security, that people are also having a proper income. The proper income is based usually on 10 to 20% more than the price of the local market. But think back, the price of the local market sometimes is so underpaid that people are living in misery. And when you think 10%, 20% more than misery, is it going to make you rich, or is it going to help you to be able to get involved into environmental protection when you have people making 60, sometimes 40 euros per month in certain developing country? Okay, so we have to think straight and say we need to get involved. And okay, to go back to that story of Chanel, we did it. We did manage to involve Chanel. They have supported us for reforestation programs. They have supported us for Food for Kids program in Madagascar. But then also they got involved with us in certain value chain to say, okay, can we develop conservation program? We developed a conservation program in Cambodia for tigers, because in the habitat of tigers you have the konjac. Konjac is a very well-known species used now. We helped Chanel to get involved with us, in the conservation of elephant habitat in Burkina Faso, because in elephant habitat you have the shea butter, and if there's no shea butter trees anymore, there's no shea butter for the industry. But if there are still shea butter, there's also food for the elephants. This is also simple. We'll get back to this one. We will get back to this one of elephants and habitat of the shea butter. But let's carry on. We did also something on palm trees in Cameroon, where they are native in the jungle of Cameroon. That's where you find the right palm trees, not plantation. You have also plantation in Cameroon destroying primary forests, which is incredible. But it was interesting research. We got involved in many different countries in... Okay, wonderful story. The CEO of Chanel was a visionary, but maybe none of them are, or when you are too early, you are also losing. New CEO came in and said, okay, but conservation is not our purpose. We are here to make money. We want to make it clean because we are a good company. Well, they are. But let's leave it to the NGOs, to do the conservation work. So all failed. I got fired, say, why do we need to have a biologist concerned about conservation in our team? We want to go for strict business, clean business, but strict business. All right. That was probably a bit too early, but now we see that consumers are asking for companies to get involved into conservation programs, to companies to show exactly what they are doing with their sourcing of the products, how they can guarantee that there is no overexploitation, that the product they're using is not having negative impact on the environment. And that's where the tool that we designed with my team before, and then that we experimented with Chanel and 30 of its suppliers on 80 value chain. So super improved tool, which is called Colatera. And Colatera tool, is showing very easily how you can have different value chains having different kinds of impact. Let me just give you 2 or 3 examples. If you are using sandalwood, you know that the essential oil of sandalwood is extracted from the trunk of the tree. So very easy to understand, slow growing tree, very isolated distribution. If I use the essential oil of that tree, I will probably have a major impact, on the sustainability of the supply chain if there's not much. That's just funny way coming back to biodiversity. The sandalwood is showing us the importance of biodiversity, because when people started to try to plant sandalwood, they didn't manage, because if you take the seed of the sandalwood, you put it into a tree nursery, you will have a seedling very easily. But then when you plant it on the field, it doesn't grow. Poof! Because the sandalwood needs a parasite, it's a parasite tree. So it will need to get involved, with the other biodiversity of the area. If you put it into a neutral soil, it will not grow. So that was interesting. But you see, agarwood or wood, very much in demand in the fragrance industry. I went into Papua New Guinea, very, very, very far away in the middle of the jungle, hours and hours to get into there, to go into swampy areas that host the most interesting agarwood you can think of in terms of the perfume industry. People get nothing from it. This agarwood is growing and sometimes they don't produce any fragrance. They produce fragrance when there's a mushroom going into the tree, decaying it, in fact. So this has been done also in agriculture now, but we need to protect these trees, and we need to understand the link in between using these trees and what we can do to protect them. I'll give you a pharmaceutical example of use of a plant. The Malagasy rosy periwinkle. I lived 20 years in Madagascar. This little purple flower, but somehow white, is having incredible power in these roots. You have 7 molecules which are super interesting for the cancer industry. When we're talking about cancer, in that case, we're talking one of them for leukemia, childhood leukemia. The Malagasy rosy periwinkle is saving about 60,000 lives in the US and Europe every year. How much are these lives worth? Local women in the south of Madagascar still have to collect the roots of the Malagasy rosy periwinkle, because the molecules are so complex that they've not been able to be synthesized by the industry. So they are still there, needing to be collected in the wild to produce these anti-childhood leukemia molecules that are used into the hospitals in the US and in Europe. Unfortunately, not in Africa or whatever. So you see, if suddenly there is climate change or there's even a revolution in Madagascar and there's no export anymore of these Malagasy rosy periwinkle roots, we are not going to be able to save these kids anymore. So this is what we analyze, with the Collaterra tool that we've set up. What are the risks of the survival of the plant, and also what should we look out, on the importance of the plants on the international market for human wealth at the level of what we see needed for the industry in Europe and the United States and in Russia and China, etc., but also at the local level, because of course local communities were already using Malagasy rosy pickle for a generation. So I'm very happy to have been able to talk to you guys. Thanks again to Airmid, for organizing all this, because we need to share knowledge, we need to share experiences around the world, and we need to go forward now to push for an involvement of the industry, like visionary CEO have already started to do, but we need more of them, and we need also a regulation system, whatever, to be able to show that it can be done, and that to oblige company to fulfill the Nagoya protocol, etc., to make sure that we use the natural resources for our health, but we also make sure that we keep it for the local communities and we keep it for the future. There are possibilities to change the world. And we tried it also in our experimental areas, again, after Wigna. And I'll show you a very quick video that we did in Burkina Faso, where we work on the habitat of the elephants, because the habitat of the elephants is hosting, of course, some interesting plants. And this is in that case for the cosmetic industry. And I wanted to push the story because we were a bit disappointed by the industry that is fighting in between its will to fulfill the needs of the customers, to fulfill the needs of their shareholders. The problem is before all, and the needs to have a long-term vision. And we see that, unfortunately, in the current economic system, the shareholder needs are coming before the long-term vision. And this is crazy in terms of sustainable economy. We are not talking about animals or plants that we love. We're talking about sustainable economy. How do you want to make a business sustainable if your resources are disappearing? What we did with the ELEPHAS Paris story is show that we can develop a company which is a sustainable, pro-biodiversity, pro-fair trade business to support long-term conservation of elephant habitat by enhancing the value of natural resources. And we did it to put down on the market new products. This is just a test, but it is just to show that it's possible to do it. And I hope you join us and Airmid and many other researchers and consumers around the world to show that we care about knowing where our ingredients are coming from. And we want to be able to say that if we can have a positive impact, let's look into that positive impact. Thank you very much, Airmid. Thank you very much to all of you to have been listening to that show of mine that I'm unfortunately having needed to make a bit tricky at the beginning and at the end also. Thank you very much for your listening, and hope that you will be inspired by all what I've been doing with the teams, the incredible team that have been going to work with me. And thank you very much.
les entreprises cosmétiques utilisent du beurre de karité. Cette industrie cosmétique, elle fait des milliards de dollars de profit. Et pourtant, on voit ces femmes qui sont dans la misère ici. Il faut que ces femmes soient soutenues pour toucher la vraie valeur de cette biodiversité.
Il faut qu'on fasse très attention à ces animaux.